Krishna prapti hoya hoy te Guru mukha padma bakhya chite te koriya kya Guru mukha padma bakhya chite te koriya kya Harna koriya mane asha Arna koriya mane asha Shri Guru charane rati aise utama gati Guru charane rati aise utama gati Ye prasade pure sarva asha Ye prasade pure sarva asha Chakudana dilaye janme janme prabhu se Chakudana dilaye janme janme prabhu se दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशिता दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशिता प्रेमा भक्तिया होते अविद्या विनाश जाते प्रेमा भक्तिया होते अविद्या विनाश जाते वेदे गाया रचरिता वेदे गाया रचरिता श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधमा जनारा बंधु गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधमा जनारा बंधु लोकनाथ लोक राजबाना लोक राजवाना आहा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया आहा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया वेदास कुछ कृभवाना वेदास कुछ कृभवाना शिला प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना शिला प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद प्रभुपाद 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 जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय प्रभुपाद नमः विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादिशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरा भक्त वृंदा हरि बोल। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरा भक्त वृंदा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरा भक्त वृंदा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरा भक्त वृंदा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरा भक्त वृंदा जय गौर भक्त वृंदा निताय गौर भक्त वृंदा उदिल अरुणपुरा भागे द्विजमणि गौरा आमनि जागे भक्त समूह लइया साथे गेला नागर ब्राजे થાય તા થાય બાજા લખો ઘના ઘના તહે જાજેર રો પ્રેમ ઢલા ઢલા સોનાર અંગા ચરણે નુપુર બાજે મુકુંદ માધવ યાદવ હરે બોલી ન બોલો રે બદન ભોરી નિદા બસ ગેલો રે રાતી દિવસ શરીર સાજે મન દુર્લભ મન બદેહ પયકી કરો ભાવન કે હો બેના ભજીલે જશોદા સુતા ચરમે પોળી બેલાજે ઉદિત તપના હોઈલે આસ્તા દિના ગેલા બોલી હોઈ બે વ્યસ્તા કેન એબે અલાસ હોય ન ભજે રે દય રાજે જીવન નિત્યા જન હસા સહે નાના વિધ વિપદ ભા આશ્રય કરી જતન તુમી થાકા પન કાજે જીવેરા કલ્યાણ સાધન કા જગત આશીએ મધુરના અવેદ્યતિ મેરા તપન રૂપે હૃદ ગગન બિરાજે કૃષ્ણ નામ સુધા કોરિયા જુરા ભક્તિ વિનોદ પ્રાણ નામ બિના કિછુ નહીં કર ચૌદ ભુવન માજે નામ બિના કિછુ નહીં કર ચૌદ ભુવન માજે Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, Haribo. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Pick me up. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, pick me up. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Radhe. Jaya Radha Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Radhe. Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram. Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram. Jai Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita, Jai Gauranita. Gauranitai Jai Gauranitai Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Hare Bol Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Hare Bol Hare Bol Hare Bol Bol Hare Bol Nitai Gaur Hare Bol Hare Bol Hare Bol Bol Hare Bol
Netalila Prasang Vishnupad Prabhans Varibrajacharya Sri Simasana Vaicharana Vindra Bhaktivedanta Swami Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Activity Founder Acharya Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Netalila Prasang Vishnupad Prabhans Varibrajacharya Sri Simasana Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai Guru Parampara Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada's Guru Puja Ki Jai Sri Radha Shyamsundar Krishna Balaram Gaurnitai Shubha Darshanarti Ki Jai Swamveda Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nidai Gaura Pramanande Hari Hari All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga All glories to Srila Prabhupada
Hare Krishna. Shri Shri Radhe Shyam Ki Jai. So vegetable cut-up is going on in the kitchen. Please, they need some help. If you can join them, that would be very much appreciated. So I'm reading from A Lifetime in Preparation, Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita. This is around 1954-55, I would imagine. And this part is called A Resident of Vrindavan. The train arrived at Mathura. Abhay stepped down with his luggage and looked around, noting the recently constructed Mathura Junction building. Proceeding through the gate and out of the station, he found a Tanga driver, agreed on the fare, and started for Keshi Ghat. For half a mile, the wobbling horse-drawn cart followed the road between the tracks and the railway yard. At the main road, they turned left, passed under a railroad bridge, and entered into an open market. Piles of fruits, vegetables, and grains were displayed on the ground, their vendors sitting beside them, bartering and measuring while customers milled about. The women of Mathura, dressed in brightly colored saris, yellows, greens, pinks, and purples, moved busily in the market. The vehicular traffic consisted mostly of bullock carts, the drivers often squatting on the wooden yokes between the shoulders of their animals, whipping alternately one ox and then the other with a length of rope joined to a wooden handle. Although this was the most populated area in the trip to Vrindavan, compared to Delhi, it seemed simple and rural. The sun was high, but the Tanga's top provided a partial shelter, and the summer's heat had passed. Beyond the bazaar, the road curved to the right, and Abhay saw the nearby white domes of the massive sandstone mosque marking Krishna Janmashthan, the birthplace of Lord Krishna. Centuries ago, invading Muslims had destroyed the large Krishna temple and created the mosque in its stead. And now, directly in front of the mosque stood a newer, smaller Krishna temple. They approached a three-way junction, New Delhi, Central Mathura, Vrindavan. The driver struck the horse with his whip, and the Tanga proceeded along the Vrindavan road, edging through the herd of white cows, the herdsman walking amongst them carrying his stick. The road was busy with Tangas and slow creaking ox carts, loaded with market commodities and pulled by squat black water buffalo. A string of small spindle-legged donkeys carried oversized loads of firewood and sandbags. Although much had changed in Abhai's life since he had come here to see his spiritual master during the parikram years ago, Vrindavan had remained the same. He felt he had done the best thing in coming here, leaving the heat, the traffic and fumes, the human passions of Delhi. It was a natural relief. Yet even as he felt transcendental emotions for Vrindavan, impressions of his months of preaching in Delhi lingered in his mind. The city streets and himself, going from place to place with his back to Godheads. Life in Delhi had been constant, vigorous preaching. Now he was more than 60 years old, but he was not coming to Vrindavan to retire. He had retired from household responsibilities, not from his responsibilities of making Back to Godhead as popular and sophisticated as Illustrated Weekly. He would live in Vrindavan and commute to Delhi, but he would never stop preaching. The sight of taller trees signaled the precincts of Vrindavan as a thin horse trotted along past the police station and water trough for animals. On either side appeared the garden courtyards of private estates and ashrams. Fragile white malati flowers, golden marigolds, frangipani trees, red hibiscus, trees of sorrow, there's something called trees of sorrow, one tree, and many other flowers and trees, some known only in Vrindavan, bloomed forth in the brilliant sunlight. The Radha Govinda temple loomed fortress-like on his left, and opposite in the distance the high-rising tower of the Ranganath temple. They entered narrow streets, tighter and busier places with markets and city dwellings, and then it became quieter again. At the end of a narrow street by the Yamuna River, near the Keshi Ghat, stood the small and beautifully ornate entrance of the Bamsi Gopalji temple, a narrow three-storied building with 3 domes and many decorated arches. After stepping over the curbside drain and walking up 3 marble steps, Abai entered the front door, the driver following him, carrying the luggage. Once aside, Abai moved his shoes and entered the courtyard, which was open to the sky through a metal grate, on which a few birds sat 2 floors above. A column of sunlight lit one side of the courtyard, where a potted tulsi plant sat on top of a pillar. The temple seemed cool and quiet. Adjacent to the courtyard was the deity room, its doors locked shut. Overhead was a mezzanine with rooms whose entrances were visible from the courtyard. A few saris and strips of cloth hung on improvised clotheslines. Mahant Gopal, the temple pujari, whom Abai had known since 1954, greeted him cheerfully. He was about the same age as Abai and had long grey hair and an unruly beard. Although Abai's attire was modest, he appeared well-dressed compared with Gopal, who wore only a coarse dhoti. Gopal led Abai upstairs. Coming out into the roof, Abai smiled to see again the wonderful vista. Barely 100 yards away, he could see the Jamuna, not only the immediate patch of water flowing before him, but to his left and right a broad, curving sheet of river shimmering in the afternoon sun. There were sand deltas, herds of cow and buffalo grazing, the flat grassy banks of the Jamuna, and plains and trees as far as the eye could see. And in the opposite direction was the town of Vrindavan, marked by dozens of temple spires and domes. Abhai's room, the only one on the roof, was small, with narrow double doors and barred windows. Sitting on the apartment's roof, monkeys with their tiny offspring sat watching, unalarmed. Just outside the door, a 2-foot-high cement pyramid signified that the temple deity was directly beneath. Abhai entered the room. Through the barred windows, he could see the palace at Keshi Ghat, the venerable tower of the Gopinath temple, and beyond, the uninterrupted flat river, the green banks, and the sky. After acquainting Abhai with the details of the room, the small kerosene burner, the rope and bucket for drawing bath water from the well to the roof, Gopal meticulously produced a government-stamped rental agreement. Abhai wrote a short paragraph declaring himself a disciple of the late Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada and attesting to his renting the room at 5 rupees per month. Both parties were agreed and signed. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. So we'll have our Sunday feast program today as usual, 4:15 RT. And Tamohar Prabhu will be giving the lecture today. Here are the devotees who have assisted their guru in dressing the deities. Sri Sri Radhesham were dressed by Mother Shanti, Chota Radhesham by Sachi Sundari Devi Dasi, Sri Sri Krishna Balaram by Mother Mantrini, Chota Krishna Balaram, Mother Ekadashi Vrata, Sri Sri Gaurnitai by Mother Draupadi, Chota Gaurnitai by Govinda Sangini, and the Gurus and Lord Nrsingadev by Krishna Kripa Moy Prabhu. And we'll be showing DVD of Srila Prabhupada. So it's following Srila Prabhupada, a new version. And we're halfway through the first one, I think. You'll get to see it.
Historic footage gives us a glimpse into the first Rath Yatra celebrated in the Western world in 1967. On another track, there's a Kirtan that goes with this Rath Yatra, and it was the melody that goes something like this. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And that went for hours and hours as we sang it on the cart. A few wonderful things about this Rath Yatra were that the crowd that gathered alongside of the cart, of partly hippies that knew nothing about Lord Jagannath, and partly some hippies who had tasted Krishna Prasad in our temple and sampled the nectar of the holy name in our kirtans, were very genuinely enthusiastic to celebrate this Rath Yatra. Lord Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balaram faced different directions on the cart. So no matter what side you were on, you were able to get face-to-face darshan of their lordships. There was a pastime with this cart where the engine of the flatbread truck that the deities were seated on stalled. And when we told that to Srila Prabhupada, he said that this was not uncommon, that the cart would stall, even if it was pulled by hand, and stop at various places along the route. So he was happy to see that somehow in San Francisco, without even knowing about this pastime, our cart stalled on the hill. The route was the full length from the Haight-Ashbury all the way to the sea. And when the cart arrived at the sea, there was a very wonderful kirtan on the beach.
He was recovering by the ocean for 3 weeks. Gursinner and I were staying there, along with Kirtananda. The 4 of us were staying in a beach bungalow. And they sent a copy of this reel-to-reel tape. And it was so wild. And it was a brand new tune. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. They made up their own tunes. Unheard of in New York. This was not done. And it was wild. Horns and cymbals and you name it. It was a full wild party sounding kirtan. And some of the devotees in New York were like, oh my gosh, what is this? But Prabhupada loved it. He was so happy, and I noticed this. He was so happy that they were still chanting. It didn't matter that it was a different tune. It didn't matter that they were wild hippies with dancing and frenzies, and probably some of them were intoxicated. Most of them even were still taking intoxication. Prabhupada loved it. And there was another one that they sent called Narada Muni, the Eternal Spaceman, which was a little record that they made. They were creative and innovative and far out. That's the kind of people that were in San Francisco. And Prabhupada encouraged them. Whereas the nature in New York was to criticize them and put them down because they weren't conservative enough. Prabhupada didn't have that mood at all. Instead, he encouraged both. And they were a little wild for me, too, because I wasn't as conservative as a New Yorker, but I was somewhat conservative. But what amazed me was when we went back there, sometime later, we traveled back to San Francisco with Prabhupada. They had completely changed. The chanting had purified them. They were totally different. They were beautiful. I mean, we're talking about Mukunda, Yamuna, Shamsundar, Malati, all these early devotees. Malati was so wild. And they were really heartfelt people, willing to try anything, and they loved Prabhupada, and they were out to do whatever they could.
Swamiji was shot in the early summer 1967 in Srila Prabhupada's apartment at 26 2nd Avenue. He had recently returned to New York from New Jersey and San Francisco. He had had a stroke. He was not in good health, and he decided that he wanted to go to India to recuperate. And we were really distraught because we felt if he goes to India, he's going to stay there. He doesn't want to come back here because it's bad for his health, the cold winters. And we didn't know what to do. We thought, well, we'll never see him again, or if we want to see him, we'll have to go to India. How can we keep him here? Of course, we couldn't keep him there. So the devotees asked me to make a simple documentary, just pictures, moving pictures of Srila Prabhupada. We had photographs to look at. The devotees wanted a film to look at, a movie of Srila Prabhupada, simply something to meditate on so we could feel close to him. And so I asked Srila Prabhupada if I could do that, and he said yes. So I'm simply in his room with him, and he very kindly tolerated my presence there as I made the movie. I didn't direct Srila Prabhupada at all. I didn't ask him or tell him to do anything. I just followed his lead. This was with an 8mm camera, very simple means. And this was the last day that Srila Prabhupada was in New York. He was leaving the next day for India. Kirtanananda was preparing his packing cases to go on the plane. It was bigger than suitcases, they were trunks. You see, this was really our Prabhupada Murti while he was away in India. The devotees would look at this film, we would just chant our rounds, or we would play a tape of Srila Prabhupada singing a bhajan, or have a kirtan while looking at it. So really not much happens in this movie, except we're looking at Prabhupada and he's looking at us. I would have to change rolls of film, and as I did that, one time Srila Prabhupada asked me to show him how the film, which was AGFA, black and white film, high speed, how the film was clipped onto the reel with a little plastic gripper. And Srila Prabhupada asked me to show him how it worked. And after I showed him, he said, "They think of everything." When Srila Prabhupada arrived in India, he was going to India for his health. And when he arrived in India and got off the plane, Kirtanananda, who was with him, who went with him as his servant, said that it was like walking into an oven in a letter that was sent to us, and Kirtanananda's comments were there, and then Srila Prabhupada followed up with his comments, and he said, "I find it quite bracy myself." So that was why he went to India, to get braced up. So it's a pretty simple film, but the beauty of Srila Prabhupada is what makes it fascinating.
I was doing a sign that he asked me to do upstairs in that first place where he was offering arti, a sign of the Hare Krishna mantra, because there was going to be a big program at Tompkins Square Park. So the sign was about 4 or 5 feet on oak tag, and I had to sprawl my whole body across it to reach to the other end. We didn't have easels in those days. So I also apologized to Prabhupada when he came in the room that I'm sorry that I'm offending the holy name. So he told the story of when Krishna had a headache and the gopis took the dust from their feet to put on his head to relieve his headache. And they didn't care if they would go to hell as long as Krishna would be cured. So when I apologized, Prabhupada told me that story and he said it's fine because it's for service.
He used to sit and turn the globe, and he would meditate on the different countries. And he would say, "Brahmananda, you shall go to Russia. Gorsinder, you shall go to Japan. Somebody else, you shall go to South America." You have to understand, we had no money, we had no manpower, we had nothing. We were a handful of teenagers. 10 people in their early 20s who were rather eccentric, all of us, because we had rejected our cultural values and were following him like a Pied Piper. And he was telling us about these different countries we were going to go to and open temples. He had his plan. It was not haphazardly done. I have a beautiful picture of Prabhupada sitting and turning his globe. He did it a lot. He meditated on the globe. He looked at the different countries. You would see him doing it a lot. And he was planning. He planned the takeover of Russia long before he ever went to Russia. This is like a part of what he knew he had to come to this world and do. We just didn't know what all he was doing. Although sometimes in Montreal, when we had a lot of time and he would talk, he used to talk to me about his different plans. We had no money. We lived in a little flat. We had rats too. There was nothing. And yet he was telling me how he was going to have a world Sankirtan party. And he also told me how he wanted to have a big auditorium where people could come and watch bhajans and hear bhajans and see plays and Krishna conscious things rather than going to the cinemas. He felt the cinemas were drawing people into another world. He had plans of doing this. And when I go to Bombay and I see that great big auditorium, I go, he said he was going to do this. It's just like if I'm a pauper and I tell you I'm going to build Disneyland. And that's what it was like. But I never disbelieved anything he said. I just listened. I was just always like listening to him. And he liked to talk about what he was going to do. And he talked about many things.
Now this painting, which was done by Jadharani, is a painting of Vrindavan. It's the Madan Mohan temple. This is one of the first paintings that Jadharani did. And it's Madan Mohan. Madan Mohan temple that Sanatana Goswami erected for the first deity in Lord Chaitanya's movement. Prabhupada would give her a picture and she would copy that into a painting. Prabhupada, he hung it right above his head. He sat underneath this. So it's the first Western connection you might say, with Vrindavan. And here's the personification of Vrindavan sitting there.
I did this painting, and then Prabhupada was going back to India in July of '67. And we were all devastated that he was going. But then he looked at this picture and he said, if you look at this picture, then we'll all be together, even though I'm in India. And if you chant Hare Krishna, then we're all packed up tight, even though I'm in India and you're here.
And of course, everybody was a brand new devotee. And nobody really knew much of anything. So there was also a lot of nonsense going on, and there, fighting and things like that. So I became disturbed, and I went to see Prabhupada to complain about some of the things that devotees were doing. And Prabhupada said to me, if you don't like what they are doing, then you set the example. A little later, I again went to see him to complain about devotees, and Srila Prabhupada said, what do you want from them? They are trying to serve Krishna. And the third time was in 1972, I think. I was living in San Francisco, and I wrote Prabhupada a letter just complaining about so many things. And Prabhupada wrote me back, I complain people who do bad things and they're the example and this and that. And Prabhupada said, who said that they're an example? He said, anyway, what are you doing? All you're doing is making money and spending it on your own household life. And he ended the letter and said, the whole movement is meant for... Because I had said, I don't understand this movement. Prabhupada said, you've been with me for so many years and you still don't understand. When will you understand? He said, the whole movement is meant for service.
Oh, here's the Jagannath deities that Shamsundar made. He made 4 sets. When Prabhupada came to the airport, we had to collect the baggage. We walked over to the baggage place where the baggage came out. These big wooden crates came, Prabhupada pointed, there was his suitcase, and then he said also, these wooden crates. Of course, we had no idea what was in them. Neither did we ask. And we brought the crates back. So these crates were in the next room, and Prabhupada told us to go and open the crates. So we went and opened the crates, and there were these Jagannath deities. But we had never seen Jagannath in New York, because, Jagannath came from San Francisco, Puri. Just as Prabhupada made Vrindavan in New York, he made San Francisco Puri. So we look at these Jagannath deities, we can't figure out, it's not Krishna. What is it? And then somebody was making jokes that these look like North American Indian, it's a totem pole. And there's 3 parts to the totem pole. So we were trying to figure out which one is on top, which one is in the middle, which one is on the bottom to make the totem pole. That's what we were thinking. There's the ladder that I was painting the apartment with. I didn't quite finish. And then Prabhupada walked in and he saw us, and we were joking, wow, this is really far out, an Indian totem pole. And then Prabhupada said, this is Lord Jagannath, the Lord of the universe. Bow down. And everybody, boom, hit the floor. That's how Prabhupada introduced Jagannath worship. So those deities were worshipped, but we had drunks coming into the storefront and so on. It wasn't proper to have them available or vulnerable, you know. So we kept them in the apartment and worshipped there.
Srila Prabhupada had been leading these Sankirtans in Tompkins Square Park at the beginning, and then when he was away in India and San Francisco, the devotees continued on their own. This Lord Jagannath doll, really, or it isn't really a deity, but a little doll of Lord Jagannath, and the devotees at one point all had them hanging around their necks. And we had a lot of questions to Srila Prabhupada, like, is it all right to go into the bathroom with Lord Jagannath hanging around your neck? And he said you should take him off before you go into the bathroom. And so we had some very basic questions about etiquette at that point. We didn't know anything.
The devotees had seen in the second volume of Prabhupada's Bhagavatam, there was a verse and a purport. In the purport, it was written in verse form. It was names of Krishna. Hey Krishna Govinda Hare Murari, Hey Nata Narayana Vasudeva. And in the purport, Prabhupada was explaining that Krishna is all of those in one. So we thought this was a mantra of some kind, and they were obviously names of Krishna, so we started chanting. We put it to music, of course, with all of the various instruments. And we were singing it, it was kind of like a hootenanny. I mean, we were really having a ball chanting this new, because this was at the beginning. There were not very many mantras other than Hare Krishna. So we were singing this and having a great time. When Prabhupada arrived, we all bowed down and paid obeisances, and he got on the Vyasasana, and he spoke to us and said, oh, who has given you this mantra? And somebody said, oh, we saw this in your Bhagavatam, Prabhupada. And he said, this should not be chanted. He said, this is not bona fide. And we were just, talk about thunderstruck. We were so bewildered. And he proceeded to explain, he said that even their names of Krishna, unless the mantra is given by the disciplic succession, it shouldn't be chanted, even though they're names of Krishna. And there's a verse like that, saying that it has to become from the sampradaya. So right after that, then he said, oh, so you want another mantra to chant? And everybody just spontaneously said, yes, yeah, and everybody kind of cheered. So he started singing, Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. And then he introduced it in Kirtan.
So about a week or so before Prabhupada arrived, I put up hundreds of these flyers all over the city on lampposts and billboards and in stores and any place I could, advertising Prabhupada's Bhakti Yoga and Bhagavad Gita classes.
Prabhupada always had his trunk as his desk. Wherever we went, he had his Indian trunk, and all of his stuff would fit in it, and then we would move to another city. And then whenever we got to whatever room we were going to be in, then I would take all his stuff out of his trunk and arrange his room, and his trunk was his desk. That's just how we lived. It was normal. And he would sit on the floor. So I would commonly spend 2 or 3 hours a day sitting in front of him taking dictation of letters, because often Prabhupada would just talk. But you see, there weren't so many letters in those days. There were maybe 10 a day, sometimes less. And so there was time, and he would talk about everything. Trains and buses, and which is better, trains or buses, about tigers, about all kinds of things. He would sit and talk. One of the sweetest times was in the evening when Gorsunder would give him massage, because all the work for the day had been done. And I would sit at the doorway and listen. We were like a family. It was just, he used to say, we've become just like a family. He used to tell me, my mother died at an early age. Krishna has sent you to be my mother. And actually, I was only 21 years old, or 20 years old, and he was the age of my grandfather, because he was in his 70s. When I would rent an apartment for him, I would just tell the landlord I'm getting it for my grandfather.
That's Damodar offering obeisances with the camera. See, that's devotional filmmaking.
During that Boston trip, almost every week, new faces used to show up from New York. All the New York devotees would come up, Brahmananda, Rama, Rupanuga. And the Boston temple had always been a small temple, like 3 people, 2 people, 5 people, 6 people, but never more than about 5 or 6. But during Prabhupada's visit there, it was just packed with mostly New York devotees. I remember the day after the Brahmin initiation, we went on a walk. I was also there. And I quipped, Boston Brahmins. Yes, Boston Brahmins. There were 6 of us that got sacred thread in the first initiation, 6 men, and no women. Then they raised a fuss, and they didn't show up. They were so angry that they weren't going to get second initiation. They didn't come.
Gorsunder really wanted this Gayatri Mantra, so he talked to Prabhupada about it. He was reading all kinds of things, and so Prabhupada agreed to give him Gayatri Mantra and give him second initiation. And so I met him on the street, and he had his hair all shaved off. That really bothered me. But that night, he had the Gayatri Mantra initiation. And I was upset, because he was going to give Gorsunder a mantra, but he wasn't going to give it to me. So I felt very left out. So when it came time to go for the initiation ceremony, I said, well, I'm not feeling very